annals of true crime. Some names evoke a deeper chill, a more unsettling sense of dread than others. These are the individuals who blur the lines between madness and calculated evil, leaving a trail of terror that defies conventional understanding. Today, we confront one such chilling figure, Edmund Kemper, infamously known as the Co-Ed Killer, standing at an imposing 6 feet 9 inches tall with an IQ of 145. Kemper was a seemingly articulate and intelligent giant who terrorized the Santa Cruz area of California in the early 1970s. Beneath his calm demeanor lay a deeply disturbed mind, capable of unspeakable acts of violence, particularly against young women and, most horrifyingly, those closest to him. Kemper's crimes involved the abduction, murder, and dismemberment of multiple victims, often female hitchhikers, but it was his chilling self-awareness, his willingness to meticulously detail his atrocities to police, and the deeply rooted psychological factors driving his actions that truly set his case apart. He wasn't just a killer, he was a self-confessed monster, inviting the world to look inside his tormented psyche. This is the story of Edmund Kemper, a journey from a fractured childhood to a rampage of terror. The desperate investigation to capture him and the chilling insights gained from his own words. Join us as we step into the shadow of the Co-Ed Killer, a case that continues to haunt, revealing the terrifying depths of human darkness. Edmund Emil Kemper III was born on December 18, 1948, in Burbank, California. From his earliest years, his life was marked by a deeply dysfunctional and abusive family environment, particularly defined by his tumultuous relationship with his mother, Clan Elstrom. Kemper's parents divorced when he was young, and he spent his early childhood shuttling between his mother and his father. His father, Edmund Kemper Jr., was largely absent emotionally and physically, leaving young Ed in the volatile care of his mother. Clan L was a domineering, verbally abusive, and emotionally manipulative woman. She subjected Kemper to constant psychological torment, often belittling him, locking him in the basement, and even forbidding him from interacting with his sisters, whom she seemingly favored. This constant emasculation and emotional abuse inflicted deep psychological wounds, fostering a profound resentment and rage within him. His mother's abuse was not merely verbal. She reportedly had a bizarre and cruel fascination with his physical development, particularly his size. As Kemper grew rapidly, reaching an imposing height even in his early teens, his mother's fear and resentment seemed to escalate. She allegedly made him sleep in the basement due to his size, accusing him of having perverse desires towards his sisters. This created an intense internal conflict for Kemper, where his physical stature became a source of both power and immense psychological pain. Early signs of Kemper's disturbing tendencies emerged during his childhood. He displayed sadistic interests, torturing and killing pets. At the age of 10, he reportedly dismembered his pet cat with a knife and later attempted to bury it. He also displayed a fascination with death and dismemberment, experimenting with dissecting various animals. These were cries for help, alarming indicators of a nascent pathology that went largely unaddressed. At age 13, his mother moved him and his sisters to live with his paternal grandparents in North Fork, California. This move was ostensibly for a fresh start, but it placed Kemper in another, unstable environment. While his grandparents provided some stability, the deep-seated anger and mental instability brewed within him. It was here, at just 15 years old, that Kemper's dark fantasies would tragically manifest into horrifying reality. On August 27, 1964, he committed his first murders. While at his grandparents' home in North Fork, he shot and killed his paternal grandmother, Maud Kemper. He later described doing it just to see what it felt like. When his grandfather, Edmund Kemper Sr., returned home later that day, Kemper shot and killed him as well, fearing his grandfather would discover the crime. After the murders, Kemper calmly called the police and confessed. Due to his age and the nature of the crime, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia by psychiatrists. He was deemed mentally unstable and committed to the Atascadero State Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility. At the age of 15, at Atascadero, Kemper's intelligence became apparent. He actively participated in therapy, showing an eagerness to understand his own mind and to appear rehabilitated. He impressed his therapists with his articulate nature, his analytical abilities, and his apparent progress. He spent nearly 5 years in the institution. Despite his violent history, psychiatrists concluded that Kemper was no longer a danger to society. In a chilling foreshadowing, Kemper himself later admitted to purposely manipulating the doctors, knowing exactly what to say to secure his release in 1969. At the age of 21, Edmund Kemper was released from Atascadero State Hospital, declared cured. He returned to live with his mother Clarnell in Aptos, near Santa Cruz, California. He enrolled in college classes at Cabrillo College and worked various odd jobs. On the surface, he appeared to be reintegrated into society, a success story of rehabilitation. But beneath that veneer, the deep-seated rage and violent fantasies, particularly those connected to his mother, continued to fester, waiting for an opportunity to unleash unimaginable horror. Between May 1972 and February 1973, the Santa Cruz area became gripped by fear as multiple young female college students began to vanish, only to be found brutally murdered and dismembered. These were the victims who earned Kemper his chilling moniker, the co-ed killer. Kemper developed a sinister pattern. He would often cruise highways in his car, picking up young female hitchhikers. His imposing size and seemingly friendly demeanor would lull his victims into a false sense of security. Once inside his vehicle, often after driving to secluded areas, he would then abduct them, take them to his home or other isolated spots, and then murder them. His preferred method was to shoot them or bludgeon them to death, then transport their bodies back to his mother's house where he would dismember them, often engaging in necrophilic acts. His first victims after release were Mary Ann Pess, 18, and Anita Lucesa, 18, who disappeared on May 7, 1972. They were last seen hitchhiking from Cabrillo College. Their dismembered bodies were found in a secluded area weeks later. Next was Iko Koo, 15, who disappeared on May 14, 1972. Her remains were found in a remote area near Big Basin State Park. Then, on February 5, 1973, Cindy Shaw, 18, and Rosalind Thorpe, 18, disappeared while hitchhiking from Sacramento. Their bodies were discovered separately over the following weeks, also dismembered. During this terrifying period, Santa Cruz was a community on edge. Police launched intensive investigations, but Kemper, with his high intelligence and cunning, managed to evade capture. He was a master manipulator, often striking up conversations with police officers during their investigations, even offering advice on the case, effectively hiding in plain sight. He was fascinated by the police work, sometimes even imagining himself as a detective. This chilling proximity to his own crimes and his ability to engage with law enforcement without suspicion made him a truly unique and terrifying figure. His meticulous planning extended to the disposal of bodies. After dismembering his victims, he would scatter their remains in various remote locations, making identification difficult and prolonging the agonizing wait for their families. The police suspected a single perpetrator due to the consistent methods, but they had no idea the helpful man they sometimes spoke to was the monster they sought. The culmination of Kemper's escalating violence and deep-seated psychological torment came on April 20th, 1973. His lifelong, tumultuous relationship with his mother, Clarnell Strandberg, reached its horrific climax. In a chilling act of ultimate defiance and rage, Kemper bludgeoned his mother to death with a hammer while she slept. He then engaged in a horrifying act of mutilation and necrophilia with her body. The following morning, April 21st, 1973, Kemper invited his mother's best friend, Sally Hallett, over for breakfast. As she entered the house, he strangled her to death, fearing she would discover his mother's body or become a witness. He then dismembered both bodies, discarding them in separate locations. This was the darkest manifestation of his inner demons, a direct response to the psychological abuse he had endured for decades. After these final, horrific murders, Kemper decided his spree was over. He knew the police would eventually connect the dots, and a perverse part of him desired to be caught and to tell his story. He left Santa Cruz, driving aimlessly across the country. On April 24th, 1973, just days after his final murders, Kemper pulled into a phone booth in Pueblo, Colorado. He called the Santa Cruz Police Department, calmly informing them, "You want to talk to me? I'm the one who killed the co-eds ... and my mother and her friend." The confession, delivered with a chilling calmness, shocked the police officers who answered the phone. They initially doubted him, believing it to be a hoax. But Kemper patiently provided specific, intimate details about the murders that only the killer would know. He directed them to the scattered remains of his victims and described the locations where he had disposed of the bodies, including the heads of his victims that he had sometimes kept for days. Upon hearing the details, Santa Cruz police immediately contacted Pueblo authorities, who quickly located and apprehended Kemper. There was no struggle. Kemper simply surrendered, seemingly relieved to finally be captured. His composure and willingness to confess were unsettling, marking him as a unique and disturbing figure in criminal psychology. Upon his arrest, Edmund Kemper was ostensibly interrogated. What followed was a series of chilling interviews where Kemper, with an almost academic precision, detailed his entire criminal history, his motivations, and the gruesome specifics of each murder. These interviews, often lasting for hours, provided unprecedented insight into the mind of a serial killer. He claimed he wanted to understand his own motives, expressing a perverse curiosity about his pathology. Kemper was charged with 8 counts of murder. His trial began in October 1973. His defense team attempted to argue for an insanity plea, citing his long history of mental illness and the grotesque nature of his crimes. However, prosecutors successfully argued that despite his psychological issues, Kemper was sane enough to understand the nature of his actions, that he knew right from wrong, and that he meticulously planned his crimes. On November 8, 1973, Edmund Kemper was found guilty on all counts. He was subsequently sentenced to 8 concurrent life sentences for the murders. California had briefly repealed the death penalty at the time, sparing him from execution. Edmund Kemper has remained incarcerated ever since, primarily at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville, a prison known for its psychiatric services. He has been denied parole multiple times, largely due to the heinous nature of his crimes and the objections of victims' families. He remains a subject of study for criminologists and psychologists, a chilling example of a highly intelligent individual consumed by unimaginable darkness. The case of Edmund Kemper left an indelible mark on Santa Cruz and beyond. It highlighted the terrifying reality that monsters can walk among us, often appearing ordinary or even charismatic. It forced a re-evaluation of mental health assessments for violent offenders released from institutions, and for the families of his victims. It remains a painful legacy of loss, brutality, and the enduring horror of the co-ed killer. Kemper's story continues to be studied as a grim example of psychopathy and sadism. His chilling confessions provide a unique, albeit disturbing, window into the mind of a predator. He confessed, not out of remorse, but from a calculated desire to be seen, to be understood, and to recount the full extent of his horrifying tale. It's a stark reminder that some darknesses, once unleashed, are nearly impossible to contain.